about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dahlia, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So Chuck Norris passed at the age of 86. He was apparently in Hawaii, and something abruptly happened, had to be taken to the hospital in a medical emergency. And then we find out this morning that he passed. He was 86 years old. And Chuck Norris was one of those men that, even though, he was aging, he didn't age. I mean, he posted videos after his recent birthday or on his recent birthday with him sparring with his trainer. I mean, he kept himself in good shape. So when somebody who's in good shape and active dies, it makes us feel a little nervous. Yes, he's 86, but still, it's a shock. So the family had confirmed and posted to the world he was a martial artist, actor, and a symbol of strength. To us, he was a devoted husband, a loving father and grandfather, an incredible brother, and the heart of our family. Many of you know him from Walker, Texas Ranger, other movies, A Force of One, and Eye for an Eye. He has a really interesting history. Apparently, he was born as Carlos Ray Norris in Ryan, Oklahoma. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He was born in 1940. His mother was Irish and his father was Cherokee. And I guess in a 1988 memoir, The Secret of Inner Strength, My Story, he opened up about his father's alcoholism and how it affected his childhood and adolescence. And he said, it wasn't until my dad came home from World War II that he really started to drink. And he had reported this to People magazine back in 88 when he was talking about his memoir. He said at his worst, he would leave the family for months at a time and then return to wreak havoc. So he had kind of a rough childhood. He says his absences were actually pleasant times. He said, my mom was working just menial jobs since she only had a 9th grade education, but there was none of the tension, the tippy-toeing around like there is when there is someone in the house who's liable to blow up at any moment. The family moved around a lot, so he was unable to make a lot of connections. And he said, the biggest problem I had was poor self-image. I could relate to this kind of, not to the same degree, but moving a lot and not having a good self-image. I think a lot of us could. And he said this was probably the main cause of his shyness. He said, I was always afraid of saying the wrong thing, so I wouldn't speak much. Now, after he graduated high school, Chuck Norris joined the Air Force. He was stationed in Korea and he learned karate. He says he wasn't good at first. He told People magazine in 1980, nothing comes easily to me. But he stuck with it. He did daily workouts. And he said, for the first time, I wanted to make something of my life. Chuck Norris was not good at karate. That's incredible. What an admission. So he returns from being stationed in Korea, comes back from the Air Force, and then he works a side gig as a karate teacher. He said, when I came back to the States, some GIs asked me to teach him. So I arranged to give a demonstration and a talk. And then he said, it was the first time I forced myself to crack that egg of insecurity I'd carried all through my life, according to People magazine. And from then on, I kept forcing myself to go a little further until I had completely overcome it. So even though we see him as a badass in these movies, he didn't feel like that internally. He started to compete. He won consecutive middleweight titles in the 60s. Then his classes became popular with celebrities. Bob Barker, Marie Osmond. One of his students was Steve McQueen. Now, Steve McQueen apparently was the one that encouraged him to get into movies. So Chuck Norris meets Bruce Lee at a competition. They become friends. And then he cast Norris in The Way of the Dragon in 1972. Norris now becomes a world sensation. He appeared in 74 Yellow-Faced Tiger, and then he was in Breaker, and I don't remember a lot of these movies. It was a little bit before my time, but now I want to watch them all. And he said, though almost all of his movies were R-rated, he told people in 1985 that he didn't think they were actually that violent. He says the buildup makes it look like more. He says, I do violence in a self-defense way. He says he also did less and less martial arts in every film, aiming to expand the audience. They also avoided sex, drugs, and alcohol, as Chuck Norris, and I love this, according to People magazine, wanted its heroes to be an example to young people. So he starred in multiple war movies in the 80s, and then he got the Walker, Texas Ranger show in 1993, and it ran for 8 seasons. But apparently there were some issues. I guess the studio wanted to shut it down after 3 episodes. Even though those episodes had strong ratings, CBS decides to then produce it, and so it ends up becoming a top 10 show. I never saw it again. I was in training. I was, but I'm going to. I just know Chuck Norris because how do you not? And he was in a lot of movies that we grew to love. But seeing him grow up with such a troubled childhood and overcoming the fact that I remember him from Dodgeball and Expendables too. But I was a big 80s movie fan, and it's interesting how when they do these movies, it isn't just about the role and the part and look at me. He wanted to make a difference. He was also a person of faith, and so he wanted to be, if people did idolize him, idolize him for the right reasons. I wish a lot of other stars did that. Some of them try, and that's why they try to get political, and they're like, well, I want to look like I'm a beacon of this. Just educate yourself, please. If you're no expert on foreign policy, you might want to educate yourself before you open your mouth. I love it when you hear celebrities be unselfish like that. And, we'll know more in the coming days what happened. I'm suspecting something arterial, something cardiac, due to the speed of it, and the fact that he was probably being very active. You can't go to Kauai and not be active. So much to do. We were just there. So many hikes, and it appears he was enjoying sparring and working out. It's just a shame to lose Chuck Norris at the age of 86. Don't go away. We'll be right back. 1-877 Doc Dolly. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Dahlia. As many of you know, I lost another colleague to suicide. And tragically, tens of thousands of Americans, including hundreds of physicians, take their lives each year. Why is suicide so common? Why doctors? Even medical students have alarming suicide rates. Nurse burnout is at an all-time high. Maybe it's the monstrous workloads we face every day. Maybe it's because of burnout, malpractice suits, online reviews. Medicine has changed so rapidly that it's almost unrecognizable to those of us who entered this field and wanted to take it by storm. But there's not a lot of resources out there for healthcare providers who deny that they are struggling or at risk. So my book, The Depressed Doctor, aims to change that for both the physician and medical student and anyone else who is struggling. Find The Depressed Doctor on Amazon or at drdahlia.com. And if you are currently struggling, call or text 988, the National Suicide Prevention and Crisis Hotline. Don't wait. The silence is killing us.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
And we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So for any of us who have high school or college student age kids, we're not easy around this time of year, especially when it's spring break. All right, let's go. Let's get out of here. And, I could never afford as a kid to go overseas or even go away. My parents wouldn't let me go away. I really wasn't able to go a block or two away. They were really, really restrictive and strict. And so I could never imagine to go on a school trip. I was lucky they let me go on a couple field trips. But, you have a lot of new attitudes towards kids expanding their horizons, learning more, not being in a bubble. These kids have been stuck in basements, playing video games, and not leaving the house. Then when the kids get an opportunity or they tell their parents, I want to travel, I want to go out there, I want to see, the world. It's welcomed. In fact, one of my nieces is in Israel, studying abroad in Israel. And she got there right before the bombing started. She's fine. And they're strong over there in Israel, but it's one of those things where I want her safe, but this was something that she wanted to do, and she does have the opportunity to leave, but she doesn't want to leave, and unfortunately in that country it's always like that. I mean, everywhere I go, every time I booked a trip there, it was, remember, this is not the Department of HHS is doing travel advisories and all that. And I know you're always kind of taking your life, at risk when you do go to the Middle East, or the Mediterranean area near the Middle East. I get that. But, when young people say they want to travel, it's they do, they learn from that. Now, if they're partying, for spring break and wanting to get, drunk and hook up, that's dangerous. And so I don't mind people studying abroad or visiting or things like that, but to party for spring break going overseas, I would rethink that, especially since we had that medical student last year that just apparently died in the ocean. And now we're being told the University of Alabama student, Jimmy Gracie, who disappeared or was last seen at a Barcelona nightclub, also found dead in the water. What's going on here? Sadly, Gracie, a junior accounting major, was last seen at Choco, a beachfront nightclub in Villa Olympica. His parents, Terrace and Teresa Gracie, said in a statement. And police have said that they found his body at Somorrostro Beach. Now, many of us assume that could have been what happened because his phone was missing, his wallet was found near the beach. But he was still wearing his chain, his gold rhinestone cross. And I think, which I want to know, I think his wallet still had all its contents. So then, did something happen to him? Was he jumped, killed? Usually you'd think they'd be robbed or jewelry or things taken. Did he have a medical event? Did somebody spike his drink and kill him? What happened here? A young, strapping, healthy-looking man. Kevin McClay, president of the university's Theta Chi fraternity, said he was with a group at the club, and they got separated. Now, he was in Barcelona, but was not staying with the same group of friends. He said that about 10 people were there visiting a few fraternity members who were studying abroad. And that's nice. That's a nice thing to do. And Barcelona is supposed to be amazing. Not sure what happened to him. Apparently, Jimmy Gracie served his chapter as both chaplain and philanthropy chairman. According to Michael Mayer, CEO of the fraternity, said these roles reflected who he was at his core, a young man of deep faith, genuine care for others, and an abiding commitment to his brothers and community. So police in Barcelona said they received a call about a possible disappearance of a person at around 3 a.m. His aunt, Beth Marine O'Reilly, told NBC that the parents became concerned after they received a phone call that his phone was picked up. Gracie was from the Chicago suburb of Elmhurst. The university said this was a personal trip, not a school trip. So the University of Alabama is in shock, and he graduated in 2023 from St. Ignatius College Prep of Chicago. He was part of the National Honor Society and the Latin Honor Society. He was a third-generation graduate, following in the footsteps of his mom, grandfather, and great uncles, according to NBC News. And I mean, this was a super student and a young college student. What happened? And here we are. Every year we hear of somebody and some student being found dead in the water. Are they drowning? Is it because they're swimming at night? Now, apparently there was possible witness and there might be a suspect. There's some mystery person. Well, that was caught on surveillance, and we don't really know too much about that. We were told that he was talking to a girl. And as I said yesterday, that's where I think people go wrong. Where you're out with your friends, all of a sudden somebody looks like they can hook up, you're their wingman, and then all of a sudden somebody, can hook up with them, so everybody separates. And then when they separate, I told you, the night I got assaulted, I was with my buddy who was going to drive me, and he was in a band, and I was there to watch his band, one of my medical student buddies. And he comes over to me and he says, I might be hooking up with this girl. And I go, not a problem. There's other students here. I can get a ride. I'm good. Just you do you. And now your safety net is fractured. And then, later it happens. And so we feel like, yeah, mom, dad, don't worry. I'm not going to be alone. I'm going with my friends. We're all going to the club together. The problem is once somebody finds somebody else, they separate. And so there's reports that a girl was talking to him. Now, not the biggest shocker. You're at a club. I am sure that you're going to talk to girls. Girls are going to talk to you. That's what happens. Guys are going to talk to you. You're going to talk to guys. It happens. But was this a trap? We forget that we're being hunted. We forget that there's predators. When somebody gets abducted, it's not always a whim. That person's been studying you. They've been following your moves. They've been watching you on social media. And people think, well, who's going to want me? How am I a target? Nobody knows who I am. I'm not famous. I'm just regular old me. Well, those are the people that a lot of these criminals want. I mean, the average criminal doesn't want Savannah Guthrie's mom, Nancy Guthrie, and I hope to God she's okay, but it doesn't look good. Because then everybody and their mother knows about it, although the suspect seems to contact TMZ. So that story is still extremely weird. Not sure what the heck is going on there. I personally think they took her to Mexico. But everybody's saying, no, she's in town. Well then how? It's been over a month. What's going on here? But the average criminal wants somebody that's not popular, that's not surrounded by people where everybody is looking. They want that person who's the loner. That person who goes, you know what, I'm going to take a walk by myself. And, I have 2 boys. And I remember telling my husband, because one of the boys was kind of big and muscular big and a pain in the butt. And I'm like, I don't think I'm worried about anybody kidnapping him, God forbid, because I even said this to his face. I go, I don't know if anybody's going to kidnap you because you're going to be such a pain in the ass. They're going to be like, get the hell out of the car. But you do worry, and just because you have a son doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to get abducted. Male abductions and male kidnapping and male sex trafficking is huge too. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened to Jimmy because he was found, in the water. But is it that he decided to go swimming? That's what they're saying. This University of Pittsburgh medical student last year did. That she went swimming and got caught in a wave. Could be. I mean, there are riptides. There are things like that could happen. But the average person, when they're all dressed up, I don't think he went for a swim. Maybe he collapsed. Maybe he had a cardiac event. Or maybe somebody hurt him or somebody drugged him. So for those of you that do have kids or nieces and nephews that want to go party, tear it up, explain to them that even though they're going with friends, the friend group will fracture once somebody thinks they could hook up with somebody. And you better have plan B. And don't get into an Uber that isn't clearly marked, and just go through all, and don't let anybody give you a drink. You get your own drink. And remember, the laws don't apply like they do in America to these other countries. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dolly, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So, we got some war updates, Iran, but one of the biggest headlines is Trump's response to a reporter who asked why the U.S. did not inform the allies, such as Japan, while Trump was with Japan's Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, and why the U.S. did not warn or inform other allies before the attack on Iran on February 28th. Well, this is what the president said to the reporter.
When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay?
Now, I mean, when he said that, I know why he says it. The Japanese prime minister looked a little uneasy when that happened. I mean, that is, it's fascinating to me how we are such close allies with Japan when in World War II, and in fact, we were, things have kind of flipped now where, China is the bad guy and Japan is our friend. Whereas during World War II, China was an ally of ours and Japan was the enemy. And what's fascinating to me about that comment with Trump is the trend we're seeing now. There's a couple things, all right? I mean, one trend is there's no trust with the media and with other countries. I think one of the biggest lessons this administration learned is when ICE early on told authorities in Denver, Colorado, look, Trent Aragua is here and we're going to come in and do an operation. And when federal officials did their due diligence to notify local authorities, what happened? Somebody decided to go to the press, leak it, so that by the time the operation happened, that apartment building was all cleared out. Now, when you have a long-standing relationship and a protocol where you're going to work with local authorities and everybody is supposed to be on the same page in terms of privacy, in terms of classified information, in terms of, and then something like this happens. Well, there's no trust. There's a big breakdown. Same thing with medicine. You know, when you hear that nurses are going into some of the Hollywood celebrity charts and talking about it, then nobody wants to go into the hospital. Nobody wants to. I mean, everybody now wants to be anonymous. There's no trust. There's supposed to be that trust. And when there isn't, well, then, I mean, it takes years and years, decades, centuries to build trust that can be completely blown in a millisecond. So when Minneapolis was like, well, I don't understand why ICE isn't telling us what they're doing. They're not telling us what we're doing. Well, after what happened in Colorado, I mean, where's the trust? How do we know you're not going to have somebody that decides, you know what, I need to go and save them? So thank you for the information. Look at what happened with the Roe v. Wade with the Supreme Court. Somebody decides to leak the ruling before it gets released. Well, there's no trust. So do we really think that everybody's involved in whether it's France or UK or Germany, that there's not going to be one single person who gets that information that doesn't go and leak it or be a mole? There's no way for the U.S. to know that they could trust what's going on. Now, they could trust Israel. I mean, Israel's intelligence is, I mean, that's airtight. And Israel feels like they could trust America, but I mean, Netanyahu talks directly to Trump, or there's probably only very few people, a very small circle where the information gets spread. And maybe somebody is getting wind of it and they're telling people. But for Trump to go and tell everybody, you tell these other countries, when these other countries do not really seem to be pro-Trump, and they do not seem to be happy about, they're all worried about their own political necks. And they don't want to look like they're supporting something that they really secretly do support. No, you can't trust them. So, yes, in a perfect world, when you could trust your allies, but are they really his allies? But the other thing that's really telling, two more things that's really, really telling is another is, when Trump said, we have our allies back, but they don't have ours. He's not wrong. I mean, if you're really America's ally, and America is trying to address the Iranian regime, who not only attacks Americans, but attacks, Germans, French, UK, individuals around other countries. They just murdered one of their athletes. For his protest, you would think the allies would be like, yeah, we are for freedom because we're free countries. They're not. They do not have America's back. Now, that doesn't mean they always have to agree with Trump. But with something like this, where bipartisanly, I mean, it is a popular move to finally stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon. And according to Netanyahu says that they have annihilated that threat with the current Iranian regime. You'd think our allies would be more in support. But the biggest thing I take from Trump's Pearl Harbor comment is he's now not bridled with the restrictions of don't say anything that could be taken out of context or watch what you say. He is showing how free he feels with that. Would I have made that same comment? No. All right. That didn't necessarily apply, but I understand why he said it. It just, Japan didn't tell us they were bombing Pearl Harbor. I understand why he said it. Does it really apply to what's going on here? Was that the best thing he could have said with the prime minister sitting right there? No, but gosh, I forget what movie it was. It was a comedy that kind of had to do with, I think it was in the 80s or 90s. And I forget who was in it. I don't know if it was Biloxi Blues or Matt Broderick was in it or somebody, but somebody accidentally gets involved with the mob. And he made a statement in this movie that said there's an element of freedom to being totally screwed. Now, I didn't understand that statement at the time. I was a kid. I was like, there's an element of freedom to being totally screwed. You're screwed. You can now die. The mob's coming after you. You're screwed. Everybody's coming after you. But over time in life, I learned there is an element of freedom that you get. You know, I remember during the recession, 2012, 13, 14, my patients are like, I could get fired. I could get fired. I'm so worried. They're going to do the layoffs on Tuesday. We're going to be hearing of the Monday layoffs. It's coming. It's coming. But my patients who were already fired, they were breathing easy. They go, well, my worst fear is over, even though getting fired isn't everybody's worst fear. But and they go, you know, I can actually sleep now. I know it's not good. I know I need to find a job. But now that I'm screwed, I have that little bit of freedom. So same thing with Trump. He has been having to watch, especially with his first term. Trump said this, Trump said this, Trump said this. Now, he isn't bridled by that. He's saying what he wants to say. Because everybody and their mother has already gone after him. There's not enough print. There's not enough cloud storage for all the things he has said that the media is covering that don't like. And so at some point, what's the media going to do? It's already starting to get old. That's Trump saying what he wants to say. So he's looking like he's free in that respect. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. You know, we've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles, along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
We are back on Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So one of you asked when I was going to retire. What age do I feel comfortable retiring? Well, I don't really want to tell you my age, so it's not going to be for a while because I cannot afford to retire. Even though my mortgage is down, I still have a mortgage. I don't know if my kids are going to be having long-lasting jobs. I don't see any end in sight of things getting more expensive and more expensive. And I don't have enough money saved. I never could, between student loans, between extended family needed money, just everything. It just was not able to necessarily save that much. I got a little bit, but probably wouldn't last more than a year or two. So no chance of me getting ready to retire. However, one thing that has made me grumpy is my exit plan was going to be having a rental property and renting it out. And then hopefully having money from that, like a little extra, even if it's like an extra $100 that can be coming in. And then maybe getting a second rental property. And if I could get a couple rental properties where money could be coming in, as long as I'm pricing it right and people feel like they're getting a good value, then that could bring in income. Well, that plan, that was kind of my exit plan because I knew in my 30s that I was not going to have money for retirement. I just knew. It just wasn't, I know a lot of people say, well, gosh, you're probably named in a will and somebody's going to pass. My family's poor. There's no money in my family. And even if there was money, nobody, when my dad died, I had to pay for his funeral. There was no money. There was no life insurance, none of that. But my plan was, that's kind of what maybe I want to try and do. Get a loan for a house, rent it, and then hopefully the income pays the loan payment, and then I get like an extra $100 a month, and I could try to do something with that and parlay it. Not the biggest, wisest plan, but that was my plan. Well, then after the COVID eviction moratorium, I was, and I don't have any rental properties. I haven't been able to afford them. Now, this can't do it right. Well, one, houses are up, but two, people who did have rentals got really, really screwed because their tenants weren't paying. Now, mind you, when you have a government saying you can't work, all right, that's pretty scary because if you can't work, how are you supposed to pay rent? So I understand why there were laws so people wouldn't be evicted. But what ended up happening with some of those landlords? When the individuals could work and things were reopened, they didn't go back to work. Many stole things from within the house if it was a furnished house. Many people wrecked it. We're even hearing with Airbnbs. I think there was one Airbnb where they have like a full-size Monopoly board on the roof and they have like some fun things in the house. And I guess things were broken into and destroyed. And so the idea of renting things out is becoming less and less lucrative, especially if people are going to steal and do things. One of the reasons why I don't rent from Airbnb is because many owners have hidden cameras. Why do they have hidden cameras? Are they, perverts? Or is it because when people ruin or hurt something or break something, they need to get that money back? So they need the proof. So they need the camera on the things that are more likely to get stolen or broken. It's just that's kind of where we are in this world right now. Well, this headline caught my eye. They say, according to New York Post, LA tells renters they are free to skip out on paying their landlords for at least 2 months before facing eviction. So Los Angeles is going to soon give tenants an option to not pay 2 months of rent until their landlords could start eviction proceedings. The Los Angeles Board of Supervisors voted 4-1 to grant the new rules, which take effect April 16th. The rules apply to rent based on fair market values. I guess $2,000.85 for a one-bedroom, $2,600 for a two-bedroom unit. And apparently what that does is, if a landlord wants to evict you for any reason that violates you're allowed to stay there 2 free months. Now, some people voted no on this, but it passed. So the change is an amendment to the 2022 Rent Stabilization and Tenant Protections Ordinance. They said it was made to alleviate recent financial strains for Angelenos, and its co-sponsors were Janice Hahn and Hilda Salas. They said it is modest but necessary increase. With this additional month, I hope we could give renters some breathing room while not putting the entire burden on landlords who also depend on rental income to pay their own bills. Well, what are they supposed to do for those 2 months? So, listen, I was a tenant for many years, and I was really, really grateful that that there were landlords, and who, gave me fairly, decent rent, but I paid. Because if you didn't pay your rent, I worked part-time jobs at Jack in the Box, and I if I couldn't get full-time employment, I worked in multiple part-time employment so I needed to pay my rent, because if you don't pay your rent, you can't stay. That's just the way the rule is. And you're seeing more and more of this change of, don't worry, if you don't pay, there's wiggle room. Now, if somebody does have financial hardship, see, what I would recommend is this. What I would recommend is, so the landlords don't get screwed. If you can't pay your rent 1 month, you go to the state and you prove to them why you can't pay your rent. What happened? See if they will give you temporary assistance. And that temporary assistance will maybe, later be either absorbed by a future paycheck or be taken off future Social Security or something like that. There's got to be some skin in the game. But you go to the state and say, I need some assistance because I can't pay my rent this month. Then the state pays the landlord. But the idea of, it's okay, you don't have to pay. Well, if the landlords don't pay, the bank takes the facility. We had an office during COVID, and, we were thinking, well, wait a second. If nobody's paying rent now, do we not pay rent? Oh, no. The bank is like, you need to pay. We're going to foreclose. I'm like, how is everybody else not paying rent? The banks aren't on the same page. We paid. We paid our mortgage. We paid our rent. And so I don't know how far this is going to go. And again, this isn't about my retirement. I've decided there's no way I'm going to be able to afford a rental property. I'm not going to do Airbnb. It's just not worth it because, even as a physician, people ask, why aren't I going to open up my practice again? It's because patients didn't pay. I loved my patients, but if they had a $30 bill or a $25 copay or a $100 bill, they didn't pay. I saw patients for free for years. You cannot have a business model when people don't pay. And you think, well, you could sue. There should be a court system. No, there isn't. The courts won't work in the, landlord's favor or the. So, unfortunately, now for you to get into a new apartment, this is why apartment prices went up. Because landlords are like, we're not going to get screwed again. You're going to pay first month and last month rent. You're going to sign away everything. And this is your rent. And if you don't want to pay it, fine by me, leave. Don't. Because once you get in, I can't kick you out. So no. But they're collecting money up front. And so that's what's going to now start to hurt people in California. Because if the landlord knows that they're going to lose at least 2 months of rent, they're going to try to collect that up front. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by Financial Fitness Show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.